Allow me to introduce our guest for today, with over, 3 decades of expertise in telecommunications and cybersecurity. He has shaped industry insights through pivotal roles at Heavy Reading, Nortel, and Motorola. And now he leads independent research on critical topics like 5G security, DDoS protection, and quantum safe networks at HardenStance, which he founded at 2016. HardenStance hosts events like the annual Telecom Threat Intelligence Summit, with hundreds of registrants last year. I highly recommend you register. And custom webinar with guests from Ofcom, NCSC, the Cyber Threat Alliance, and so on. He's actively speaking at industry events, including Mobile Europe, ETSI Security Week, Quantum Networks, and so on. And he supports collaborations with groups like GSMA, ETSI, NetSec Open, earning recognition as a Cyber Threat Alliance champion. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our distinct pleasure to introduce you to Patrick Donegan. Hi, Patrick. So glad to have you here today.
Hey Nick, great to be here. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the 30 years. Yeah, greatly appreciated.
um, and our second guest today is Motti Goldstein. He is the Vice President of Product Management in Allot. He's overlooking the network intelligence product line. Hi, Motti, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, my pleasure.
So we're looking forward to hearing both of you. We'll start with you, Patrick. You will take us through the ups and downs of the market trends and let us gain a view into what's happening in the market now. And then Motti will take us through some of the solutions to the challenges that we will hear in the first part. So, Patrick, stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick. So that was the intro slide. What are the main threats in DDoS going into 2026? Well, let's look back, shall we, at the last year. And long story short, it isn't getting any better, it's getting worse. Botnets comprised of compromised IoT devices have been a growing component of DDoS threat landscapes for the last few years. This has really gone up a notch in the course of the last few months of 2025. A higher proportion of DDoS traffic is direct path now, so traceable. The DDoS defense model has traditionally focused on defending against inbound attacks. What we're seeing with these botnets now is telcos and ISPs themselves suffering disruption and performance degradations arising from outbound and crossbound attacks. Cheap, insecure IoT things on the telco's own residential and business premises, customer premises, being compromised and enslaved by botnets at scale for use in DDoS attacks. In the last 2 years, we've gone from multi-terabit attacks being a rarity to happening every few days. Today, Nokia reports seeing multi-terabit DDoS attacks pretty much every day, sometimes several of them per day. There's also a continuing trend in terms of the duration of any one of these DDoS attacks towards a greater proportion of them lasting no more than a couple of minutes. And we know that's intolerable in some financial services and gaming sectors, but it's not at all trivial either in the telco sector. It's enough, for example, to make a Teams call drop or lots of Teams call dropped. These may not have the look and feel of what was a conventional DDoS threat, long-lasting attack, but they are often the work of DDoS threat actors, and they can have a substantial effect on user experience, customer satisfaction, and customer churn rates. There's a tendency to talk in terms of hacktivism, politically motivated threat actors being a substantially increased driver of the DDoS threats that we see out there. And I do and don't agree with that. I do agree with it in the sense that there is a very, in the last couple of years, we've seen a very much increased correlation between DDoS attacks and political events surrounding the behaviors of nation states, the behaviors and presence in certain locations of high-profile individuals. Quite clearly, there is a closer correlation now between the world of politics, geopolitics, and political events, and DDoS attacks. DDoS attackers focusing their DDoS attacks coming from people who are politically motivated. So in that sense, I do agree that the threat landscape is more driven by politics than it was. Where the only reason I hesitate to say that is that I contend very much the idea that many of these hacktivist groups are independent of nation-state threat actors as they claim to be. Many or most of them do indeed claim to be, but actually, if you look under the hood a little bit, you read about some of the threat intelligence that comes out of some of the leaders in threat intelligence, you realize that while a lot of these hacktivist groups claim to be financially independent of nation-state threat actors, they're not just financially dependent on them, they're actually directed by them as well. So it's worth making that distinction. Is AI driving the DDoS threat landscape? No, I would say sort of a bit. For now, AI is not enabling DDoS attacks to become any more sophisticated. I haven't seen a great deal of evidence to that effect so far. What AI is doing is allowing existing DDoS attack types to be automated at scale far more efficiently, enabling threat vectors to be adjusted dynamically. What that's enabling is DDoS attacks to be carried out with much greater cost efficiency, which is very much to the attacker's advantage. The DDoS threat conversation has traditionally revolved around the target and the telco customers that are caught in the crosshairs. We're not there just yet, I don't think, but with the arsenal of firepower that botnet operators are accumulating now, with the size of attacks they're able to orchestrate, I don't know that we're all that far off from DDoS attacks posing a bona fide national security threat. Yes, obviously, to particular critical infrastructure entities, but actually beyond that to the broader economy and society at large. Part of the challenge, of course, is that in the telecom sector, we are inadvertently aiding and abetting the DDoS attackers. We're giving them access to faster uplink and downlink speeds, just as we're giving that same capability to our users for bona fide reasons. For the first time, 5G fixed wireless access is enabling us to connect smart home devices to resource-constrained mobile networks. For the first time, infected IoT devices in the home are spewing malicious traffic out into the mobile network, as they've been doing for years in the fixed broadband network. So the most high-profile attacks have emanated. I've gone and done that again, haven't I? There we go. I wanted to go back. There we go. System's misbehaving itself slightly. There we go. Yeah, so the most high-profile attacks have emanated from the Isuru botnet, which was used to unleash a wave of 20 terabit attacks beginning in September last year. The effective sources of those attacks came from the customers of Tier 1 US carriers, the infected devices in the homes of those well-known, high-value brand carriers. One of the interesting aspects of the behavior of Isuru was that it was preceded by, in August, there was the takedown by law enforcement of the Rapper bot, another large bot, and it was taken down by law enforcement, and a cause for great celebration. All of the devices connected to Rapperbot were disconnected, and that was a cause for great celebration. However, within a matter of days, or not much more than that, in many cases, a lot of those devices that were enslaved by Rapperbot were scooped up by Isuru. The Isuru botnet operators basically recaptured those devices and brought them into its own botnet environment. The actors have also been very careful to avoid some critical governance sites to try to avoid upsetting them too much. We've seen outbound DDoS attacks in excess of a terabit per second coming out of ISURU captured environments. Material disruption to telco services. This has been widely reported. I've not seen data myself. I imagine that data does exist, but I've not seen it in the public domain. And of course, as I mentioned, these issues are made worse by the high-speed access that we're giving to consumers in both the fixed and wireless environments. Okay, so let's look at some of the data on botnet activity. And what it shows is that large-scale takedowns of botnets like RapperBot, as I mentioned, they're having some impact on suppressing botnet activity, but unfortunately, it's tending to be temporary. So it's enabling us to take one step forward, only for us to then take another step back, or even 2 steps back. The trend is botnet activity is, first of all, spiky, sharp peaks followed by sharp slumps, but the underlying trend still points to more rather than less botnet activity. Let's have a look at some of the detail. On the left there, you can see these are botnet scanning events sourced from F5 Labs. 2024 very much spikier than 2023, but the underlying number of botnet scanning events is very much higher for 2024 versus 2023. On the right, we've got details from the Spam House project, where they're basically counting malicious botnet controllers from the global visibility of the internet that they have. And if you look at the 6 months to December 2023, excellent. The controller count is down 9%. First 6 months of 2024, down 6%. Second half of 2024, down 4%. Looking really good. And then you hit the first half of this year, and up we go again. The number of controllers is up 26% for the first half of this year. So, of course, law enforcement is doing a good job. Of course, they should keep doing it and doubling down on doing the job that they're doing, finding ways to do it better and more frequently. But these efforts are suppressing, capping, limiting the growth in malicious botnet activity. They're not, at this point, turning the tide. In the regulatory domain, leading governments are introducing IoT security regulations, putting mandatory security design requirements on IoT device manufacturers. That's all good. Good examples here, the UK, Germany, Singapore, and Japan. But what impact is this regulation having in the here and now and the immediate future? Limited, obviously. It's only a handful of countries. I'm waiting for a slide to move. And there it is. Okay. So one of the leading examples anywhere in the world is the UK, and the UK's Product Security and Telecommunications Infrastructure Act. It came into effect in April 2024, and the UK government in December, so 8 months after it came into effect, did a survey of consumer IoT vendors to test their level of compliance. Now, when you look at these numbers here, there's a glass half full and a glass half empty view of this. Clearly, 52% of vendors surveyed reported that they comply with having a unique password. Again, I go back to the glass half full, glass half empty. It's still only half of them, right? Which ain't very good. On the other hand, if you go back from December 24, a year previously or 2 years previously, the numbers would have been very, very much lower. So the numbers are going in the correct direction. 27%, sorry, are compliant with a requirement to have information on security updates available. One of the interesting things that they found, and perhaps not entirely surprisingly, the survey found that whilst 27% of the vendors who declared that they were compliant with the requirement to have information available on security updates, actually the researchers found that only 19% actually had evidence of this available for them to view on their public sites. So, again, one has to be aware that whatever the numbers are quoted by vendors, they need not necessarily be entirely accurate. So this is progress, but let's recall also that the UK is very much a leader. Most other countries are nowhere near this level of progress, and there's still a long way to go as well. I wanted to talk for a moment about. Oh, sorry, I forgot about this slide here. The previous slide was relating to the UK, but let's take a more global perspective, and it's the same thing in terms of trend. This was from a study carried out on the state of vulnerability disclosure policies in global consumer IoT. It was carried out by Copper Horse Limited, a well-reputed company. And what they found was that this is the numbers that they've been surveying now for many years. They've adjusted their methodology over time, which accounts for the 2023 blip there. But what that basically is showing you is that as of 2024, 1 in 3 consumer IoT vendors has a vulnerability disclosure policy. If you discover a vulnerability as a researcher with 2 out of 3 consumer IoT vendors, they will say, well, thanks for letting us know, but we have no process for dealing with this. Thank you very much and goodbye. At this point in time, as of end of 2024, just over a third of vendors had a vulnerability disclosure policy. Where is the direction of that going? There's a case that says, on the one hand, as regulation kicks in, one might expect the rate of growth, the positive number, to accelerate because regulation is becoming more familiar. That's the positive take. The negative take might be actually, the ones that are compliant are the leaders. They're the early birds. They've gone first. Actually, the further along the chain you go, you have vendors that are less good industrial citizens, shall we say, and less and less likely to be willing to comply, to go to the lengths of complying as the percentage of compliant vendors increases. Again, glass half full, glass half empty. The fundamental point here, in my mind, is that progress is being made without a doubt. Good stuff. Regulation works to that extent, but in terms of bringing any short or arguably even medium-term relief to the problem of DDoS threats coming out of IoT things, then we're not there. That's very much a long-term play. Oops, that's gone to there we go. This Purple and RDKB are two, for those of you who don't know, are 2 open source ecosystems building software for open source home router products. And RDK is the more mature one. It's been deployed in North America widely, starting to be deployed in Europe with Deutsche Telekom now. Purple is supported by AT&T, Verizon, Orange, and others. And they're both terrific. And what they offer is an opportunity to have single router platforms that application vendors for home applications, including home security applications, can build to a single open source operating system, lifecycle management components. All of that reduces enormously the amount of integration effort that's required between applications and proprietary products. So Purple and RDKB, love them, terrific. However, and here's the however, they are at this time focused entirely on monetization. The goal of these open source home router ecosystems is to enable telcos to grow an extra 3, 4, 5 euros, dollars, pounds, whatever, on their ARPU every month. And that's absolutely laudable. And as I mentioned, security forms part of that, and fantastic opportunity for users to be able to get a home router security agent on their router, which will secure all the IoT things in their home. Fabulous, wonderful. But there is an opportunity here, in my view, and I've had some discussions with folks in the industry, in the Purple Foundation, and some of the leading vendors, in terms of saying, well, look, as well as the monetization side of the house, why isn't the telco security operations community engaging with Purple and RDKB and trying to build capabilities into those open source ecosystems, which will provide better telemetry, for example, better signals, better information, better feedback into the telco security operations teams that would help them in their efforts to head off, mitigate, suppress DDoS threats coming from those home routers and all the insecure things attached to them. So that is that's the threat landscape. What I wanted to talk about now as a prelude to Motti from Allot sharing where Allot's roadmap is going in this space. I wanted to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of inline and out of band approaches, architectures to DDoS threats. So as we look at the solution space, there are a lot of different layers to an effective DDoS protection architecture. How effectively you leverage your threat intelligence and things like that. But let's look at the inline and out-of-band approaches. So with an inline solution, you're inspecting every single packet directly in the flow of the traffic. On the upside, you don't miss a single packet. It comes into your network, you see it. You can have very fast detection times in units of 30, 60 seconds. That's important for the short duration attacks I mentioned earlier. On the downside, however, you have to put a device on every single link in your network. Each device is a potential single point of failure. You can certainly mitigate that with smart network design and redundancy, but that comes at additional cost. Because you're inspecting the traffic inline in real time, you're adding latency. The fundamental issue with an inline approach, especially in telco networks, is that it doesn't scale well. With an out-of-band solution, you're not directly in the traffic path. You're monitoring ports and making copies, samples of net flow and flow spec data at intermittent periods. So you're not seeing every packet or anything remotely like it. You're taking your copy of the traffic and backhauling it to a scrubbing center for inspection. Then you're making mitigation decisions on which, if any, packets are malicious and how to remove or block them. On the upside, your architecture is relatively simplified with comparatively few points of failure. You're not directly in the traffic path, so there's no latency impact. You get comprehensive coverage without having to deploy on every single link. Your resources are concentrated in the scrubbing center. An out-of-bound solution scales cost efficiently, which is extremely important in large telco networks. On the downside, you do have to be satisfied with slower detection outcomes. So that is the background to the Allot story today. And for that, I'm delighted to hand over to Motti.
Thank you very much, Patrick. That was great.
Absolutely. And Patrick, feel free to chime in while Motti is reviewing the solution to some of the major challenges that we've just heard about.
Okay, I'll try to do that without, I'll stick my hand up or something.
Yeah.
Okay. You can also unmute yourself and just speak. Okay, Motti, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nir, and thank you very much, Patrick. That was really insightful. And before I really going to dive into the Allot Smart Net Protect suite of solutions and how we architect everything and provide it to our customers, I'd like to briefly kind of echo Patrick's word about the main challenges that telco operators have these days and what are the implications there. So the first thing, and if we can move one slide, I'll try to take control. If we can look at the big picture, we say that the attacks now are terabit scale attacks. That means that the telco operators would need to have an effective defense strategy that is able to scale up to terabits of in the entire network. We saw even an example of up to 20 terabits. And it needs to be future-proof and ready for a cloud-native design, as many of the operators move part of their network or some components into the cloud, either private and so on. Furthermore, the attacks themselves are more, I would say, fast, aggressive, and short. Let's see if you can click next one here. Thank you. And for some reason, the control over the presentation doesn't work. We need to talk with the product managers of Zoom. It means that the strategy for defense needs to be in real time, and it needs to be in line in order to enable second level mitigation, or tens of seconds in that case, because otherwise you will not be able to protect fast enough from these aggressive and fast bursts of traffic. Moreover, the attacks themselves are now multi-vector attacks. It's not the, let's call it, naive or previous years. Nowadays, as Patrick rightfully mentioned, attackers leverage existing technology like AI and LLMs actually to kind of build those new attacks that uses multi-vector attack, and they are more sophisticated. They are rather different than the attack of yesterday, and so you cannot find, one signature to block them all. You need to be very adaptive. You need to be multi-layer, and you need to have some kind of behavioral analysis or pattern analysis in order to identify those anomalies to mitigate zero-day attacks, which become more and more frequent. And last but not least, we do see that the attack vector, the attack surface, has been increased by all these IoT devices. And although regulations try to keep up with the pace, the actual reality, and all of us are aware of it, is that AI-driven botnet attacks are becoming more and more frequent. And the fact that we have all of these IoT devices, all of them connected to the network, all of them, or in many cases, most of them, are unsecured, and a smart attacker can generate an attack that each one of these devices contribute a small amount of packets or a connection establishment rate, but the overall effect is overwhelming. So you need a defense strategy which combines both inbound as well as outbound traffic control, and the protection should be bidirectional and with bot containment. And if I may also add, you need to see how you also block the communication channels in order for those attacks not to be triggered. So these are just kind of the four challenges and trends and how they affect the strategy. And those things, together with everything that was discussed here in the market, was the things that were in front of our eyes when we designed the solutions and the overall deployment options that we have in the network to provide our customers a way to defend their network in order for their customers to be safe and be able to get proper quality of experience and availability to their network, because everybody wants access to the network everywhere, but they want to keep it safe. So when we looked at our Smart Net Protect offering, we wanted it to be able to protect not only the current attack vectors and the current situation, but also to future-proof our customers' network resilience, so they will have a multi-layer defense mechanism which is empowered by AI technology, so they can protect not only today, but also tomorrow's cyber threat with anti-DDoS, anti-botnet, firewall. But also, we wanted to leverage our heritage as a networking company specializing in DPI, which is now DNI, Deep Network Intelligence, in order to provide also the layer of protecting the quality of experience, because today we don't only need the connectivity, we also expect a certain quality of experience. We want things to flow properly, like in this Zoom meeting. And we also want to provide the telco operator, or the techco as it is nowadays, also visibility and analytics on what's going on in the network. So we came up with this smart net protect offering that enable our customers to have a very flexible, and we'll talk about some of the flexibility factors in deployment modes and flavors for adaptive DDoS protection. And we wanted to protect. We started with layer 3 and layer 4 volumetric DDoS protection, but we are now adding also layer 7 protection, because we saw that the market is going there and the attacks are not only on the infrastructure, but sometimes on sensitive services within the network of the operator and sometimes outside of it as some of the services that they provide. And of course, it needs to be integrated with the overall threat centers, security operating systems, SIAM, and so on. So the overall platform has a lot of, I would say, properties, but I do want to focus in my next slide on 3 types of deployment and kind of echoing or following up on what Patrick started to discuss, as there are different type of architecture, and we want our customers and our users to have a very flexible and versatile protection to enable them to work with any type of network and any need. As we saw, different networks, different customers have different needs. So our baseline, as we started, is with the inline deployment mode. This is something that we have been selling for a while, providing many customers. We will talk at the end the testimonial of one of our distinguished customers from Rakuten. The inline sensor provides the best level of protection, as we observe each and every packet. We can detect attacks very fast and mitigate them very fast. But the downside of it is that you have a certain issue with scale. So then we came up with a different approach that is coming up really soon now of flow-based protection. This is a very interesting flavor of attack. As you can see here, we have the brains, the network, the net protect controller is actually, you can see it resides in both, but the sensor is different. What we do here is that we use flow spec, either NetFlow, IPFix, to sample part of the traffic. So we do not interfere, we are not in line. Okay, the traffic flows from the router to the network and back. We're just sampling some of it, so we are off path. But we use our neural network and AI-driven algorithms to detect anomalies from this traffic. And when we identify an attack, then we can mitigate it through flow spec. And this is exactly what you see. This architecture enables to scale up, practically unlimited, in the sense that the scaling is much, much easier. It's like 3 to 4 times order of magnitude easier in that sense. So scaling is very easy, but you do have to take into account that mitigation may be slower, as we need to aggregate more packets and we are sampling and so on. What we saw is that some of our customers, they wanted a kind of best of breed solution. And this is why we came up with the hybrid approach. The hybrid approach takes, I would say, the best of both worlds, as you actually see that the detection is still flow-based. This enables us to be very flexible in the deployment and the scale, and we can be deployed in a very large and complex network. But the mitigation is performed differently. We actually use flow spec here not to mitigate, but actually to divert the traffic to the on-prem scrubbing center, which is basically the same, I would say, a sensor or mitigator like in the inline. So this way, we are enabling our customers to actually to enjoy the scale of flow-based solution with the precision of inline mitigation. And the nice thing about it is when you do the design for the on-prem scrubbing center, you don't need to scale it together with your network. You actually need to scale it up to the maximal attack that you want to mitigate from your network. And of course, we have devices that go from tens of gig up to terabits. So we have a very large scale and portfolio. And so we can practically mitigate any attack up to even those tens of gig attacks that we saw earlier. So these three different deployment modes are enabling our customers to be very flexible in what they do and enable us to serve many types of needs coming from the market. But once we started marketing those and having discussion with customers and going through their need, what we actually saw is that in many cases, the network is even more complex than that, in the sense that the telco operators have different segments in their network, each one with different needs. For example, they may have very sensitive businesses, or call it premium customers that requires high level of protection. And they also have mass market, consumer grade approach, which need to be protected, but they have a different SLA and different needs. And those type of converged network, they reside in kind of the same place, and our customers need a solution for both of them. And then we came up with a segment-based approach, and this is one of the things that come in 2026 to enable the telecom operators to actually provide different solutions and different deployments mode to different segments of the network, and this way enable, for example, what you see depicted here on the slide is mission-critical services being served with an inline solution, while mass market segment being served by a hybrid on-prem scrubbing center. But the connecting line, or the brain of both of them, is the same centralized controller utilizing the same AI-driven detection mechanism, and kind of orchestrating both of types of deployment. And in some cases, it could be that the mass market will be served partially by on-prem scrubbing center and partially by off-spec, flow spec-based solution. So you kind of seeing what's going on and how a single technology can be deployed in multiple ways, serving the different needs of the different segments, while enabling the telecom operators to provide the needed accuracy and the applicable scale they need for the network. As we know, networks always grow. The need for data is continuously growing. So what I'd like to do here briefly, just being cautious of the time to enable some time for Q&A later, is to deep dive. It's not a very deep dive, but to highlight a few points on the two new things, because the inline, I assume that maybe most of the people here or some of the people on this call already are familiar with this. This is a product we already have and sell for a while. But the flow spec mitigation and the off-ramp, or the on-prem scrubbing center, those are new things coming up in 2026. So let's have a small window into them to describe what are what new stuff is coming in and why. Yes, please, Patrick.
Yeah, so let me, if my audio is good, let me just make a few comments here. Because, going back a while, I have tended to find far greater favor and be far more of an advocate of the out-of-band approach for the reasons of scalability and reliability that we talked about, or single point of failure, sorry, that we talked about earlier. So, having said that, it's interesting. You mentioned Rakuten Mobile because they actually held an analyst event 10 days ago or so. And I was on it, and it was their C-suite. So this wasn't a kind of specialist DDoS thing or anything. This was their C-suite, and I asked them the question. I said, where are you at with with your DDoS protection? And I forget which of their executives it was, but he went straight to Allot. He said, we use Allot. We're very pleased with what we're seeing from Allot. So it's quite clear that Rakuten Mobile have found a very good way of implementing the inline solution. I don't have granular detail into how those guys have done it, but they clearly have done it very, very well. But I guess where I'm going to is that coming from being a primary advocate of out of band solutions, I think it's terrific to see you guys converge the two models, bring the inline together with the out of band, giving your customers both capabilities, the ability to mix and match. I think that's absolutely the direction that the market wants. As attackers get more and more sophisticated, it's quite clear that telcos want capabilities that can match and that are flexible and granular and offer a Swiss Army knife of different tools to use in different ways and in different contexts. I guess maybe one other thing to speculate, be interested to get your comment, is when we talk about segmentation, and I think that's exactly right. But I think there's an automatic assumption that segmentation necessarily means business or consumer. But I just wonder whether even, for example, within the consumer market, if there are telcos that have enough gamers in their environment, for example, is there potential to create a dedicated gamer segment using inline to protect those individual consumers where most consumers don't necessarily need it?
Absolutely correct. And you can even add to it 5G SA approaches with slicing and so on. So the network does become more segmented in that approach. And exactly one of the drivers for the segmented based approach we see here. Yeah, absolutely correct. Nir, if we can skip quickly, I will go quickly on the flow based and the hybrid. What I'd like to highlight here, a kind of a summary. And of course, everybody on the call, you will get the full presentation and you can go over the different details over it. What we'd like to see here and to highlight, kind of put all the approaches side by side and let's go over them to understand the different values, which one is better in which scenario, so you can have the full picture of the different solutions and flavors we support. So the inline, as we said, we see 100% of the traffic, we inspect all of it. And the flow-based, it's a kind of a sampling which we aggregate and then we look at it. And in the hybrid deployment, we detect flow-based, right? And we mitigate like inline, both inbound and outbound. We can protect from both nets and command and control as well, which is very important, by the way, as cutting off the communication line actually prevents the attack from even taking place. Even if all those IoT devices are being weaponized, the server or the attacker cannot trigger them, as we can cut off the communication and actually block the access to those servers. We have a back office AI-driven automations that detects those servers, and it is ongoing on a daily basis. We update our system with those IPs, and we simply block them. We block those servers. So the inline, you will have all of these together with the layer 7, what we refer to as SBOT, that is service-based anomaly detection, on top of the network-based and host-based anomaly detection, is an AI-driven, let's say, a brain or engine that identifies anomalies targeting a specific service or specific server in the network. And the flow-based enables to have an inbound and outbound DDoS detection and mitigation. Regarding the coverage, the protection coverage of the inline is the entire traffic as we filter all of it. The flow-based also doing the entire traffic, although the filtering is being done by the router, if you remember the scheme I presented before. In the hybrid approach, the mitigation is being done by diverting the malicious traffic we detect to the on-prem scrubbing center. Okay? Regarding accuracy, you can get the highest accuracy and the fastest mitigation with the inline, of course, while flow-based has a lower or moderate accuracy, and the hybrid, we have a moderate detection accuracy and high mitigation accuracy, as it's kind of having both of them. And on the flip side of it, the flow-based has the highest scalability, as the only thing you need in order to deploy it in your network is just to enable standard flow spec coming in from your routers and deploy the, let's call it, the controller to have this centralized brain, while the inline is more moderate in the sense that you do need to scale up and add more devices or more licenses as your network scale, and hybrid is somewhere in between. And this also goes to the business value in the sense that inline provides you a maximal protection level or the best SLA you can have. But if you want to have a lower or the best total cost of ownership, we all want the total cost of ownership to be low, then you would go with the flow-based, and the hybrid kind of balances both of them together. So this is, I would say, a very, very high-level view of the different approaches. And as we said, you can also deploy 2 or 3 of them in the same network to each one of your different segments and different SLAs in the network and kind of enjoy the full suite of capabilities in your network. So just before we finalize, I really, we've mentioned Rakuten and Patrick mentioned their meeting from last week, and just delete the annotations from here. And here, my drawing. And this is a testimonial from Eric Olsen, Rakuten CEO. And as you all are familiar with Rakuten, those are very innovative. It's a very innovative company, fast-pacing. They are growing in Japan. They have very big aspirations there, but they want to keep their network protected. They are in a tremendous, very innovative journey toward cloud-native mobile network, and we are there. We have provided them with the DDoS protection suite, fully deployed over a containerized cloud-native environment, and you can see the testimonial for yourself. And we take a lot of pride of working with such customers. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Moti. That was insightful. Let's take a few questions. The first question is, I think probably for you, Moti. Could the solution be integrated with any vendor or CM solution?
In general, our solution or our solutions outputs are standardized. So in theory, we can be connected to any SIEM solution from any vendor, although some integration may be needed. As you know, standard is the standard, but some vendors use it differently. So some integration is needed, but the general answer is yes, we can work with any solution.
Excellent. So, Yeah, next question is probably for you. Yeah, for you, Patrick. So someone asks here, how do you see the shift from DDoS attacks being a risk to enterprises for being a risk to society at whole?
Well, I suppose it's part of it is down to the sheer volume, the sheer numbers of devices that risk being infected, the sheer volume of IoT devices that are insecure. If you can, I mean, we've had incidents. There was one in North America coming up. In fact, it was 2 years ago now. Windstream, the company never admitted to it, but they were cited publicly many, many times. So by highly credible sources, they had, I think it was 600,000 Soho routers wiped out. Soho routers bricked completely by a firmware attack. So when you're getting into those numbers, when you've got 600,000 households taken offline at once, and potentially numbers north of that, there's no reason for that number to be kept. It could go far north. When you've got numbers of that kind, and when you've got nation states who are looking to, and there are live cases of it, where kinetic warfare is combined with cyber attacks. When you've got nation states plotting and executing attacks of that scale, you're you're talking about one home router going down along with hundreds of thousands or millions of others. You've got the national security incident there. You haven't got near can't get online. You've got Near and Motti and Patrick and 2.4 million people can't get online, and that's a national security incident right there. So I guess that is what I'm alluding to in terms of the consumer and societal risk, and one hesitates to be overly doom mongery about it, but at the same time, the reality of what can be achieved is demonstrable, and therefore there's no point, not recognizing the risk for what it is.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's see if we have time for another question. Are you protecting L7 in addition to L3 and L4?
I can take this.
That's for Motti, yes.
Yeah, I can take this one, and the answer is yes, we will be adding a layer 7 SBOD protection feature to our product very soon.
Thanks. How are you? That's probably for you, Motti. How are the solution you presented are different from other vendors? So maybe, yes, go ahead, Motti, and maybe I can just start and add a point that.
Please.
So basically, both solutions are providing a high flexibility and accuracy in attack detection, even though their input is flow spec based sample aggregation, thanks to the following two unique detection capabilities. So one of them is bidirectional correlation between the inbound and outbound traffic flows. So basically, it doesn't just observe the flow; it also pings back and see what's the response is, and if there's an actual computer behind, an actual well, it actually enables more precision, a more precise detection of anomalous patterns and attack signatures. And this is significantly enhancing the accuracy compared to traditional flow-based solutions that rely solely on just one direction of sampling. And the second point is that adaptive detection engine, it first assesses the expected attack size, and only then it decides which detection method to activate. So it's either an AI-based engine, right? AI-based anomaly detection for large attacks, or it actually triggers the threshold-based engine to reduce the false positive for smaller attacks.
Mm-hmm. And if I may add to that, and in your answer, that was very, very much correct. Thank you. You refer to the flow-based and the hybrid solution. In the hybrid solution, we also provide botnet detection. As we understood, all of us, botnets becoming a real threat nowadays, both to national security, to ourselves as users, as well as to the reputation of the communication service provider. We did not touch on that, but we can talk about it separate session. So botnets, and of course we have our inline solution, which is rather unique in the way it operates and protects from zero-day attacks due to its anomaly detection mechanism.
Absolutely. And the last question, I will take it. Do you have existing customers currently using the product? So the answer is yes. We have dozens of customers. You're actually looking at one of them. His actual picture. So yeah, we have lots of customers. We will be happy to share some of these, case studies that we have learned all over the world. We have providing network protection solutions for over 7 years now. Not to mention our networking experience that spans over 30 years. So the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd like to, first of all, tell you, for all those who joined this session, you will get a copy of the HardenStance briefing and a recording of this session. And obviously the same goes for the ones who are watching the on-demand version. And with that, I do want to thank you very much for having you today. Patrick, thank you for joining us.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me. Great to see the innovation.
And I want to thank you too, Moti, for joining this session today. Thank you, Moti.
My pleasure.
And for all of you who have joined this webinar, this is probably one of over 100 different webinars that we've held on cybersecurity, network intelligence, and network monetization. You can find all of them in our resource center on our website. Just log into allot.com and head into our resource center on the right-hand side of the menu. If you have any additional questions, so please, you can send it over to info@allot.com or contact us through the Contact Us form in our website. And with that, I'd like to wrap up. Thank you all. See you on our next webinar and have a pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.